Welcome to part 2 in this How to Plaster a Wall series. If you missed part 1, I'll place a link down below. In part 1 we talked a little about the trowels, how to hold a trowel and how to prepare the walls ready for skim and how to mix the plaster. In this part we shall go through applying the plaster right the way through to troweling up, and we'll see actually how few strokes are actually required to finish a wall. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to do that below, and like, share and subscribe. Okay, normally I would have a spot board and tip the plaster onto it, but there's no room here, so we'll just have to take it straight out of the bucket. Now the trick to putting it on is not to play with it. Just to get it on as quick as you can, really. So doing this actually takes a little bit of practice. If you just put it on and just tilt the trowel just slightly like this, that would be fine. This does level it out a bit better, but that does take a little bit more practice. Plastering, honestly, of all the things I learned, is just a practice thing, and being on the job with someone who knows what they're doing, just to tell you what mix is, what dry times, things like that. And a practice and not being lazy. That would be the only thing, especially on a bigger job when you're with a group of plasterers. Once you start plastering, it's usually 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours non-stop in one hit. So this is on. Now I am fiddling now, like I said, no need to fiddle. So I'll just leave that now, 5 minutes, when I get this other side on, and then we'll come back and have a look. Okay, so this is the other wall on now. I've not touched this wall since I put it on, so we'll just have a first look at it now. So it's got a while to go before it goes off. So again, it will just literally be, just pop over it with your trowel, clean the edges up a little bit, make sure they're flat, and then you're going to want to leave it really. The more you play with it, the more you start moving the plaster around, taking plaster off, making it uneven, etc. So I'll probably leave this for about another 5 minutes. And then I'll clean the edges up before they go too hard, which will be just running the brush down there and maybe wiping it with a sponge, because obviously in a house, one as opposed to a new build, we've got to try and keep stuff clean. So this wall here is drying much faster than this wall, which I knew it would, because this was pretty much old paint covering it all, so the Unibond won't dry in as quickly as the plaster. This was sort of half paint, half plaster, so it's dried in much quicker. So when I go over it for the first time, you can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera, that you get it much flatter. But again, it will just be a matter of going over it once, not playing with it too much. This wall definitely will be finished probably half an hour or so before the wall behind me. So realistically, for a beginner plastering, if your walls are paint like this, you will have a lot more time than if you can see lots of old plaster like down here. If that's everywhere, then it will suck in much quicker. Because I've left it and not played with it since the last one, literally you can just give it a quick go like that. And really all you're doing here is just checking that there's no holes. And you probably will have holes if you've not done it before, but you can just literally scrape it off the trowel and fill it like that. Or when you've emptied your bucket and cleaned your bucket, tip it into a carrier bag so it stays wet for a while and you can always come back and grab a bit. So, let's see, I've hardly troweled this at all, really, because on a flat wall with Unibond, really speaking, I should have given it another hour, half an hour or so to dry, because it was not quite tacky. So you have to be super, super careful. But you really want it, so that we did this morning, and that's just ideal now. But in the summertime, that would have probably been 5 minutes, but because it's in this house, no heating on, it's just taking a while. So you just have to be really careful if you put it on and the Unibond's still quite tacky. But as you can see, I mean, I've hardly troweled this at all. So what I do now, before it goes off too much, I'll just brush around the edges, because we're doing it in a house, obviously, with 𝐥𝐤𝐬s and architraves and stuff. And I'll just make sure they're all nice and flat. So this is just a damp brush. And you want to do this before the plaster goes too hard, so you don't have lumps and stuff you've got to scrape. It's just much easier to get it off now and keep the job clean than scrape it all off later. Especially down plastic like this, which when it does go hard will be a bit more of a job to clean. Right, now with the trowel and a brush, I'm just going to go around with a sponge and just clean everything off while it's still wet. Obviously, you don't need to do this if you're doing it on a new build or an extension, or you've took your old trays, the skirt is coving off. This one's closing in now much quicker than the other one, as I thought. I don't know if you can hear that. And that's the sound it starts to make, and you can feel it as it starts to go off. So this is closing in now. This is where you make any final adjustments So you just keep your trowel nice and flat. Now if you're doing 2 coats, this would be the time just about now to put your second coat on, but there's really no need to do this on a wall that's already flat, and by the time the customer decorates with a roller, it will be all bobbly and everything anyway, so you'd never notice the difference, to be honest. So yeah, so I'm just going to go over this one last time, just make sure it's nice and flat, most of the lines are taken out, and then the next stage will just literally be the water stage. Right, so ready for water now. This one has all been watered, so this just needs a polish in about an hour when we leave. We're ready for painting, which is just literally going over it a couple of times and getting the watermarks out. So, I mean, we've hardly done any troweling on this, as you can see, so too much fiddling just makes for bad walls. There's no need for it really. So watering, just literally with a brush. You can do it with a water spray. Not too much water. I'll just give it a little wet. And then you just go over it and get rid of the water off of there. Now, if I was on a building site, I would do a sweep and just let all the water, or the snots as they call it, go over the floor, but because I'm trying to keep clean in the house, I have to be a little bit more careful and do things just a little slower. So that's basically it. Give it a few minutes and just pop over it again. Make sure all the water's gone, any lines. And then in around an hour, like this one, I'll just be able to pop over it and you'll just take out any little water lines as it dries. You could even do it the next day, it doesn't really matter. And then paint it, when it all goes light pink, like the ceiling's done, that's all light pink, then it's ready for painting. 50-50 water, 50-50 water, 50 paint for your first coat. So, all done. Terrible light. But yeah, job done. For watching this 2-part mini series of how to plaster. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free below. As I said, I do have a wide variety of stuff in my maintenance line of work now, so if there are any kind of jobs you'd like to see, if I come across them, I will try my best to record them.